From the time I came to Israel, I became close to a certain Rav in the yeshiva. I spent many Shabbosim and Chagim in his home, and when I became engaged, I brought my Kala to meet this family as an example of the kind of home I aspired to build for ourselves. We truly admired this model Torah family. Over the years, as both our families grew, it became harder to remain in contact as frequently as we once had, but distance never lessened our admiration for this family or our commitment to aspire to build a family like theirs. One Shabbos afternoon, about 15 years after I first met this family, my 8-year-old son came home from the park crying hysterically. He was crying so hard, it was hard to make out what he was saying. But when my wife took him to the bathroom to wash his face and help him calm down, she saw that his zipper was open and his underwear was torn, and he had bruises on his inner thighs. As my son calmed down, he was able to tell us that he had been lured by being asked to do a mitzvah into a stairwell and attacked by a teenage boy who put one hand over my son's mouth and his other hand between his legs. My son didn't know who did it, but he thought he recognized the boy from around the neighborhood. My son mentioned in passing that he kind of looked like one of the boys from that family, a comment that in all the confusion of the moment, none of us gave a passing thought to. Our first issue was how to protect our son and how to make sure that this trauma was processed properly in such a way that it wouldn't make my son afraid to leave the house or go outside to play. This was so far outside our normal Shabbos experience, we couldn't even begin to know where to go or who to turn to. Motzei Shabbos we called Magen. Magen guided us through the process of making a complaint. We all assumed the perpetrator was some drifter from outside the neighborhood, and certainly not a boy from a successful family within our own community. Some local Rabbanim asked me why I went to Magen and tried to pressure us to avoid cooperating with them. However, my current Rosh Kollel knew about their work and encouraged me to keep working with them and to file the formal complaint as they recommended we do with the Childhood Protection Services. The Rosh Kollel explained that such a boy would certainly strike again, and his next attack might be even more vicious. If such a boy, in addition to protecting our own son, it was necessary to protect the other neighborhood kids who might also become victims of this boy, or this monster, as I privately thought of him to myself. Meanwhile, Magen posted discreet warnings, explaining that there had been an attack and asking people to come forward with information. They also met with concerned parents and calmly and professionally explained what had happened without identifying us, and how families should go about talking with and protecting their children. As a result of this, another incident was reported, which seemed to be about the same perpetrator, but with a different victim, another young boy. For several months, nothing happened and life went on as usual. Then one day, there was a disturbance in shul after mincha. A young boy came in crying to his father that something had happened in the stairwell of the shul during mincha. I only heard because I happened to be standing close to the boy and his father. But the story and the boy's reaction seemed eerily familiar. The father froze. But several men in the shul sprang to action, as they knew about the previous incidents from Magen, and ran to search the stairwell and basement. They saw a teenage boy leaving the back exit of the building, and they followed him. He was fast, but they were faster and caught up with him. By the time I also caught up with them, the boy had been tackled by this group of fathers, all these ordinary men who davened in my shul, and were determined to put an end to this business of someone preying on our children. The boy looked like any other boy in the neighborhood, not someone I particularly recognized, but someone I had certainly seen or would expect to see around town. The boy turned white as a sheet as the men demanded to know his name. But nevertheless, he answered in a whisper that rocked the foundations of my world. This teenage boy was not some unknown drifter. He was the son of my own Rav from yeshiva, my mentor, the man whose family I had admired for so many years. I never would have believed it if I hadn't been there, if I hadn't heard with my own ears his whispered admission of guilt. And I immediately recalled what my own son had said so many months previously, that he thought he recognized the boy, that he kind of looked like one of the boys from that family, a comment that hadn't meant much at the time, but now meant everything. This boy wasn't some kid who was off the derech. His family was the derech we all admired and aspired to achieve. My Rosh Kollel taught me that this world is the Olam Shel Sheker, but I never understood what it meant until that day in shul after Mincha. I only know that if it hadn't been for Magen, this boy would still be out there, roaming around town, unsupervised on Shabbos afternoons, hurting our children. Because it was Motzei Shabbos when the police were called, this wasn't the first complaint of a Shabbos afternoon attack on young boys. Thanks to Magen, they had been waiting for this call for months. And now the police sprang into action and knew exactly what to do. The boy was arrested, even though he was just a teenager. He has been placed under the supervision of the courts. He has been evaluated by experts for how dangerous he is and treated and controlled according to that evaluation. I hope the boy will get better, or at least be controlled, and be able to be part of a community without putting other children in danger. My son has been treated by an excellent therapist who is a specialist in post-trauma, and Baruch Hashem, my son functions perfectly, doing well in school and socially. He has successfully moved on. A large part of this was the validation he received from me, from my wife, and from Magen's team at the time of the incident, and the closure in knowing that the boy was caught and is in responsible hands. Baruch Hashem, my 8-year-old son's cry for help and full disclosure has led to other boys being saved.